Welcome. Welcome, everyone. More people are joining us. It's good to see you. I happen to be in my screen porch here in Sarasota, Florida, because it was a little loud inside the house with the family, and they seem to need that space. So I'm being serenaded by the birds, but also an occasional airplane or lawnmower. So please, thank you for your patience if you hear any of that. I'm happy to acknowledge that we will have another guest with us just for a few moments, and that is Sage. You remember Sage from the beginning of our classes. There he is. So he's here to answer any technical questions that you may have. I've received some emails about how to access the videos, the discussion group, and the reading assignments. So, Sage, if you wouldn't mind just taking a couple minutes to answer and address those questions, that'd be great.
I would love to. Hi, everybody. My name is Sage. You can, if you want to just jump in and ask a question with your voice, you can, and you can also do it in the text chat. I'll keep an eye on it. But I just thought I would share my screen briefly uh, and show you. So this should be kind of how it looks to you. This is um when you log in, let me make sure this is right. Yeah. So um so when you log into the main um portal here, you should see all these live classes, and I think you're all doing super great on that because you're here. And that's a good sign. Now, what what maybe isn't super intuitive is where the recorded classes are. And if you saw what I did, I scrolled. So on the left-hand side, you'll see live courses. Now what I can do is I can close this little up arrow and you can see recorded classes. But if the live classes are open, then you have to scroll all the way down to recorded classes. Okay. And um, we have what, one, two, three, four, five classes recorded, and you can watch all of those there. And then tomorrow I will put up this weekend's classes, and you can see them there. So I also though wanted to point out at the top of the live courses, there's a resources for explorations online, and it has the main resource folder, more about the Antioch Waldorf program, the PDF of the course calendar. It has materials for the pastels and reading assignments and like that. So that's pretty much the overarching gist of it. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Hi, this is Sharon. When I go in, I get this page that says mark incomplete or continue.
Ah,
And so I don't know if that was what was hanging me up because
yeah.
I couldn't, and then when I would click on something, it would show me on the left just the date of a practice, and then I would click on it and it would say again, mark incomplete or continue. I didn't,
Uh,
so I took some
okay.
photos of your
Oh, I
page.
see. Is that when you are looking at recorded sessions?
No, it,
No? Okay.
can I send a screenshot to you separate? I don't want to hold everybody up.
Yeah, sure. Or you can share your screen if it's there. If you're savvy with screen sharing, we can look at it. If you have this problem, I bet somebody else has this problem. I would be surprised that you have a problem that no one else has. That would
I
seem.
also have this problem.
There we go. I heard somebody. See, we're not alone.
I
We
also
also
have the
have
problem.
Pat has the problem.
I saw
Good.
the problem before, but I figured out how to fix it.
Amber, please share.
It's when you first go on and you have the classes showing up on the left-hand side, you have to select the class that you've already done and mark complete and continue. If you haven't already done a class, it will hang you up. So go through the classes that we've already completed and select each one, mark complete and continue, and then go to the current class and you should be fine just to get in.
Wow, Amber, you're ready to run online courses. That's wonderful. I had no idea about that. That's beautiful. What you should know is I am not going to suggest for Deborah to use this complete and not complete for attendance, because most of you are doing it online, and everybody that, if you click on the live course and go online, you can just click complete, whether you were here or not. I had somebody click complete for all the courses the first day. They went through all the live courses and clicked complete they had 100% completion, which was technically not possible, but that's fine. It probably made them feel good that they had clicked that button. But you can, this is what I was referring to. Okay, good. Let's see, Sharon. Ooh, good. I'm gonna get a cool screenshot. Oh, okay. Let me share this with us all. I'm gonna stop sharing and share something else. Hold on.
So gross.
So where did this go? Here it is. I think this is it. Share. Okay, so this is what, who did this? Sharon. Okay, Sharon shared this. So meditative practice, March 22nd, meditative practice, self-development, mark incomplete. Was it Amber? Amber, what would you suggest for Sharon? Do you know? You're muted. Okay. Amber's gonna, all the answers in the world. I think we all together have all the answers. Go ahead, Amber.
I mean, many minds, right?
Yes.
Let me see if I can share. Continue.
Okay.
Okay. So here I am on I think it was the same one, the March 23rd. And I can mark it incomplete and continue if I want to, but
Can
I
you
really
share
don't need
again, Amber? I think do it one more time, will you?
okay. So it was this class, the meditative practices that she had.
Oh, yes.
And you can see down here in the center, I can mark it incomplete and continue if I want to, but I don't need to. All I need to do is just come down here and choose today's class. And then I can join the meeting or I can complete it and continue.
Wonderful. If you're not seeing Amber's screen, I didn't first. I noticed there was a tab at the top that says meeting and Amber Gates screen.
Oh,
and
sorry.
I clicked, no, you're doing perfect, Amber.
Can you show how to go from here to the place where you can add discussion and you can see what's planned?
You want to
while
do
you're
that,
in there?
Amber? You're doing
I'll
great.
let Sage go back and do that.
Okay. So,
Stop there.
Like
okay,
from
well,
this point right here?
yeah,
if you-
Amber, stay
Yeah.
there. Would you click that? Yeah.
Yeah.
But so here, every class should have a discussion. Can you just say something, Amber? Say like, hello. That's nice. Yeah. Good. And then you can create. And so now that discussion should appear for everyone. Okay. I don't know if there is a central location where you can see all discussions at once. There might be a way for me to link that. But I get notice as an admin. I don't know what you get as participants. Amber, have you ever gotten any kind of notice about discussions?
No, but I'm not aware. Let's see. There was
Okay,
only
so,
one
yeah, like-
discussion on that very first day. I think. Oh
Yeah.
no, here.
Yeah,
No,
so
I haven't gotten notices.
yeah, I don't know if I've gotten all the notices for these, but and I think Deborah has too.
Well,
So
and it looks like Amber has them too. It's just in that upper corner.
Right, but they didn't notify. Like I didn't get an email or
Oh,
any
I
kind
see.
of.
yeah,
Okay,
so you
I
can
I
go through.
wonder, I wonder, Sage, because we need to move on, and
Okay.
it seems like there may be more questions regarding this. Could we schedule a time at the end of a class in the future, like our next class, see if we can work it out that way and individuals can ask the questions and we can go through it?
And you can also email me. I'm happy to do a one-on-one, or whatever. But I think we've made some good. Is Sharon feeling at all better? That's what I want to leave with. That Sharon maybe feels a little, but I don't know if I can hear her. I don't know if she's talking to me. She might be just studying. No discussions have appeared. However, what I was looking for last week was the assignment with the specific pages related to A through F and philosophy of freedom and Douglas. So this, Deborah, is something that maybe this wasn't in the discussion. Do you know what Pat's
It-
talking about?
It was in the discussion, but if they
Oh.
don't know how to access the discussions, then they
Ah.
wouldn't get it.
Yes.
So until we figure this out, I'll send it in another way as well,
Okay.
like email as well as in discussions. And
Perfect.
thank you, Sage, for your time today.
Of course.
And thank you all for your questions.
The last thing, just look for those little numbers in the discussion at the top right, okay? But Deborah's going to email it to you. All right. Thank you all
Yeah.
for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye, Sage.
Bye.
So helpful. I know that took up some of our class time, but I think it's important that everybody is on the same page. And Sage is the guy that helps us with that. Well, I'd like to lead us through an imagination of the first of the 6 basic exercises that we've been working on. So if you wouldn't mind just finding a comfortable spot. Okay, thank you. Yes, and you could close your eyes. We're going to imagine this experience, doing the exercise and practicing that. So find yourself in a comfortable spot with your eyes closed. Take a breath in, hold it, out. Again, holding, out. Now before you, you have an object. It's plain, it's simple, it's uninteresting. You draw your attention to this object each day at the same time, ideally in the same place. You observe the object for 5 minutes. You look at it, you touch it, you smell it, you feel its weight upon your hand. You ask, is it cold to touch? Is it warm? How was it made? What is its purpose? When your mind starts to wander, you bring your thinking back to that object. You notice the subtleties, the nicks. Is it dull? Is it sharp? Is it bright? What are the colors? Where are the grooves? Does it make a sound? When you have thoroughly penetrated the object with your thinking, you stop after the 5 minutes. You do this day after day after day for a month. Ideally, the same object. As time passes, you gain a feeling of firmness and security. You become aware of this and you turn your attention now to your inner life, to your soul. You pay attention to the subtleties of your soul. You focus your thinking in your head realm and in the middle of your spine. And you imagine that there's this light being poured into that, the light of security and of firmness. and you hold that. And now you think with clarity and knowing. Come back to our group here together. Your feet are on the floor. You may open your eyes. I hope that this little imagination gives you a picture into what it may be like when you do your exercise each day. So I encourage everybody to do this every day until we meet again, and then we will take up the second exercise. And today, Douglas will share a little more about these exercises with us. So on to you, Douglas.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. Hope you're all enjoying that exercise, and we'll come back to it later on. We will go briefly then to the calendar of the soul and then straight to Eurythmy. The growing human eye, itself forgetting, yet mindful of its origin. The growing human eye speaks unto the universal oil. In you, myself releasing from fetters of my own creation. In you, I ground my own true being. And so, Leonor, if you're there, we will go straight to you then for half an hour of Eurythmy. But you're muted. There you go.
There we go. Hello, everybody. Can't do Eurythmy with glasses on, so. There were a few questions that were outstanding from yesterday. One was if a middle schooler refuses to do what you ask, what do? Well, I only had that happen maybe once or twice, but it was high school, not middle school. But it was put in the larger framework of discipline in general. For that person, say, if that happened, I would say, oh, well, can you tell me why? Oh, well, why don't you sit and just watch? And then if you feel like you change your mind or something, come and join. Now, if you have an academic class, that's easier because they're at a desk and they can just sit. But with Eurythmy, there's no desk to hold them down. But I found I always had success with, I said, oh, well, just why don't you sit and watch? And if you figure out what they're doing and you feel you can join, then join. And the other, the larger question of discipline, I had big classes in Eurythmy and there's no desk. So they can run around, they can talk, they can get in the curtains, da 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 da. So my key with discipline was look to myself. Am I following my own rules? And so I boiled down 3 rules for my classes. 1, no one talks when I'm talking. 2, no one talks when the musician is playing the music. 3, no one talks when 2 of you were asked to say something and you're talking, or a student is talking. And so they put up their hand. Is there any time we can talk? Yes, I'll give you time, but I'll tell you, listen, I have to do something with the music so that now you can talk. I found it was very difficult to follow my own rules, not to talk when someone else was talking, et cetera, et cetera. And it became a real inner discipline for me to really follow my rules. And it became a game with the students to see if they could get me to break my own rules. So I had their attention. And so I followed my own rules. And I had absolutely no problem with discipline. Everything moved because once you're doing what you want them to do, they're engaged. And when they're engaged, they're not resisting. Okay, and the other one was what to do to prepare yourself in the morning. I'm sure many people have things that they could tell you about, your mentors, whatever, Douglas. But one reason I'm concentrating on the hallelujah is that is something you can do in the morning. You can do it first before you have a verse when you wake up, or you can wake up and then just, do it maybe one or two, maybe 3 times. One time doesn't really do it. There's something called I Think speech. It's a little bit more, well, it's not more complex, but we don't have time to do that today. And the other is the breathing. If you do your exercise or a verse and then take 3 good breaths, really filling up and then blowing out, and then coming into an A. This brings you back into focus, that you're not out there, and that helps a lot. I don't know if that answers your question. And the third question was when we did the hallelujah, and I said, this hand is back and this one is forward. This is the left. And in this case, it makes a difference that you have the left hand back and the right hand forward. And normally the E is the right hand forward and the left hand back. That's here I am. Me, myself, and I. But this one is reaching towards the spiritual world and down towards the earth. And it's only used in rare instances. It's not used in every poem, or that. It's only when it's referring to the higher worlds in some way. And that's what it's doing in Hallelujah. Okay, that's it. So let us start. I have a wayward lock of hair this morning. So let's start with the contraction and expansion with the Blake poem, and that's in your resources, by the way, or part of it. And let's do it twice. Once just contraction and expansion, and then repeat it, bringing the sound forms into that contraction and expansion space. And I'm going to start in the middle in my space. To see a world in a grain of sand, and heaven in a wild flower, to hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. Now, before we do the second time, we've been moving on a straight line forward and back, but there's a way to make it more intense, and that is to curve it into a spiral. So starting at the back, going to your right, instead of going straight, let's say in a flower, in, and now pull it into a spiral, a flower. It's like a spring has more tension, it takes more work to do it. So the spiral, and now let's go the other way. And you pull it and you cross over your own line there and come in. Now unwinding, cross back over and come back to your starting place. So let's do it now with the sounds. And if you can bend that straight line when we're coming in, go ahead. To see a world in a grain of sand, unspiral, and heaven, otherwise, in a wild flower, to hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in and power. Great. How did that feel? A little different, a little bit more movement? What do you think? Anyone have a response to when we start to bend the straight line?
I wish I had more space.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, you can do the eurythmy on a postage stamp, but you would just think the form, take small steps, and draw the form with your arm so that it extends into the space, even if you're in a very, very small space. Even if you're sitting in the chair,
That
even if you're on an
idea
airplane.
of
Yes,
swirl.
sorry? Someone was saying something? Okay,
I
so
like
let
that idea of the swirl that you're making with your arm.
was that a question?
I think it was a comment, and her phone is breaking up a little bit, but that she liked the swirl, that really spoke to her.
Yes, it is so nice to come off the straight line. We start with the straight lines because it's simpler, you can think it, but we come off it with that spiraling, and it accents are coming in, and it really goes right to your heart, and then here it flows out, and you can really experience the expansion, I think, much more. Thank you for your comment. So now
I
let's.
have a- I
Sorry?
have a comment and a question.
Yes.
Are we trying to not mirror you, but instead make sure we're going the same direction that you are? Because I
You-
found that was distracting to me
Yeah.
when once we added the swirl to try to make sure I was using what looks like the opposite hand and what, you know what I mean?
Right. Just do it any way you can. When it really makes a difference that you're using the left hand or the right hand, I'll say so. Otherwise, it's too complex with all this reversals. Just just follow it any way you can. You're doing great. So let's do the vowel sounds and go through them. Ah. Let's try it on a little bit of a spiral. A step on the spiral. A. Another step. E, and that is right hand up. E. O. And into the middle of the spiral. Ooh. Now backwards, out of the spiral. Ooh. O. Right hand. E. A. Ah. Any of these, that was beautiful the way you did that. Any of these sequences I give you are also things you can do at home and in a very, very small space. So now I have a little verse poem from Native American. It's not in their language, but it contains all the vowel sounds. And then I'll say it once and then we'll pick the vowel sounds out of the sentence and do them. Alone, no, sorry. Under the stars and the sky, alone I will prove the power of my spirit. Now, you might have heard some other sounds in there. Alone I will prove, ow, the power. And ow is a diphthong. It's ah and oo together. And we do it with the ah. And one hand comes over and your arms are parallel. Ow, my power. Alone under the sky. And now I is also a diphthong. English has lots of diphthongs. I is two arms sweeping in a direction under. So it's under the stars and the sky. Alone, I will prove the power of my spirit. Yes. And that was connecting the sounds and leaving out some because we don't want to turn into a windmill. Let's do it one more time. Under the stars, and think way up to the stars and the sky. Alone, I will prove the power of my spirit. Yes, and we could do that on all kinds of forms with the curves and the straight lines. Did you see how we just picked a few of the sounds, not all of them? If we did, and this is talking about an inner experience, and that's what the vowels are good for. When we have an inner experience or a response to something around us, a soul response, then we go to the vowel sounds. If it's this responding to, again, to the outer world, but more like an artist's response, oh, I see that. I see the fish in the water. It's more like we become it and form it in the water. Do a w and think water, in the water, and the fish in the water. Now, if you're full of amazement at the fish, I see a fish in the water. Ah, in the water. So that's how I'm picking them, the sounds from the poems. So now let's go back to the consonants, and let's go along from the consonants. We did the series yesterday. B. And now let's take that B on a spiral. N. B. B. N. Grrr. Ooh. Good. Now, yesterday I said we'd focus on the second half of that sequence. G. We finished the L, the first hand. Here I am ready to go. And here we go. G. And we're only open part way. Get a response from the world. A wind from the world blows by, and we can listen to it and read it. Then time to take some initiative. Yes, and it's one movement. It's that with a little bit of an impulse. That's it. And it doesn't go up and out like the flames lots of times tilt and it just takes you out of yourself. It's not the sound. It has this impulse of not like the M reaching towards the world, but carving a path and then a little bit of an impulse. It doesn't all happen at once. If you're digging a path with a shovel, it's 1, 2, 3. Oh, I see I'm beginning to have a path. That's it. And you feel the heel of your hand, and then the end of your hand kind of protects the movement from flying away. Let's try it. Down to the ground. Up. Not letting it go. It doesn't just splatter. It's not like a windstorm. That's it. That's good. So good opens the space. I listen to the response. And now the S. And it's really like you have eagle's wings. It's like you've got a Japanese paintbrush with ink on it, and you're going to paint in the air the form of the S. Let's do it with just one hand. Imagine you have a big paintbrush. Great. Practice it a few times. Different arms, 2 arms. Try not to cross through the A. That's it. Beautiful. It's around the column of your spine that these wings move. Okay. And then the creative action has been complete by that. It starts here. Good. I have an idea. Whoops, sorry. I goofed. Good. Someone liked my idea. Aha, maybe I go forward. I got the okay. I did the painting. It's done. I can rejoice. Ha! And I have it finished. So if you take that with the whole pattern of a life, we had that slow start of the baby and the crawling and the standing up and the running with joy in the air with the R, and the 18, 21-year-old saying, here I am complete now. And then comes adult life. Got to make my place. Have to interact and listen. Have to do something, start something. Have to really bring my work into completion. That's like 25 years in the middle of your life. Then I offer it up. There it is, done. And I can step back and I am complete with the T. You can also do the T coming down, and then as it goes down, you press your legs together and stand up on your toes. So above and below meet. Here we go. It's hard. Here we go. Yes, and you have to press the back of your hands together and your knees together and your ankles together to hold that like a sword in the, that's it. Let's see everyone practice with the T. T. Yes. Great. T. T. To really reach out. You're gathering all of your life experiences and it's pouring down through you. It is part of you now, and you are formed. Press your hands together. When you come here, your hands turn. See, and first the tips touch, and then the whole hand, it looks like a Goetheanum angle. And then as it pours down, you press those hands together. It holds the form. Really press them really hard. Press them hard together. Okay. Yes. No loose hands. It really has to, it's like I'm gathering all the space of my life together, and the two sides, my left brain, my right brain, my up, my down, all connect, and it's a form. I mentioned the consonants come, it's like the speaking of the zodiac, and there are families of sounds. So t, d, and th are all in the family of Leo, of this reaching out. T, d, and th is pressing down but spiraling down. And that sound is an English sound. There are not many languages that have th. It's this coming down, and your arms are spiraling all the way down to the ground. It's the opposite of sh. Luckily it's yes, and it spirals down, so you have to go down a spiral. It's like a waterfall going down, and the two hands are not together like this, like baking bread, but the right hand is heavier and it pushes down, and the other one follows. That's it. And you can make this spiral a little bit bigger so we can see it. I'll get back here so you can see it better. And d, and back to t, t. That's a second t. Okay, so let's do, oh, it's almost time. We started a little later, so let's do The Cloud by Shelley again. Do you remember it? It's the cloud speaking to the earth as it goes across the sky. I'll say it first so you remember. I bring fresh showers for the thirsting flowers from the seas and from the streams. I bear light shade for the leaves when laid in their noonday dreams. From my wings are shaken the dews that waken the sweet buds every one when rocked to rest on their mother's breast as she dances round the sun. And rocked to rest on their mother's breast is the earth dancing around the sun. So it goes from the large image to the small image, from the large. So the whole poem is full of breath. That's it. So here we go. I bring fresh showers for the thirsting flowers. See how we went from huge down to the little flower. I bring fresh showers for the thirsting flowers from the seas and from the streams. I bear light shade for the leaves when laid in their noonday dreams. From my wings are shaken the dews, and that's a duh. It's a pointing duh. The dews that waken the sweet buds, everyone. When rocked to rest on their mother's breast as she dances round the sun. You are right with me. You're doing great. How does it feel? What do you like about that poem? Anyone like that poem and that movement?
I like that poem a lot.
I like the rhythm.
And there's a rhythm, it's so strong and it's got this breathing, a contraction, expansion, so healthy. It's quite amazing. So let's finish. So Douglas, we're catching up, I think, here with the Hallelujah. And this, again, this is something you can do in the morning, you can do it in the evening, you can do it at all times. It is the universal word. Any question about it before we do it? We'll do it twice. Yes? I heard someone. No questions. Okay, here we go. First time just to bring it back. And remember, this is sort of the center gate that opens, and then we're really in another realm. Sorry, I won't talk it during it. Beautiful. You're really doing the music, the movements beautifully. Now this time we'll do it the second time, and if you want to offer it up for somebody, you may. So I will say goodbye, and it's been a pleasure working with you. You're doing the movements beautifully. Thank you.
And thank you, Leonor. I hope we can see you again at the end of this session. Remember that being the Sunday session, we also agreed to stay a bit after for those who might have lingering questions that don't get answered in the course of the day, including, by the way, I felt sorry there for, is it Kim, that you were so patient there, but your questions at least were focused in the chat, and maybe you can bring them later on if you wish one more time. So in the time we have here for this day, there are various things I want them to take up. First, in a moment or so, I'm going to invite you to say a bit more about your experience of the exercises you tried, maybe again yesterday, for practical training and thinking, and then a bit how those exercises from that lecture relate to this huge book called The Philosophy of Freehood. And then maybe time also for a few last thoughts about the 6 exercises as we come to an end. I want to begin, though, then diving right in with these exercises to practical training in thinking. And I'd love to hear from somebody who tried, either in the last week or in the course of the last day, somebody who tried exercise number 1, which is in shorthand called the exercise of the weather. It's on paragraphs 19 to 21 in your text. And I just opened the floor here for a moment to see anybody who tried it, maybe for the first time or tried it again, and what you got out of it. That is to say, what you did and what you got out of it. Is there somebody willing to offer a thought about this first exercise if you tried it, or maybe if you didn't, wish you had tried it? Any thoughts about the first exercise? You can either have a little hand there or unmute yourself simply and speak.
I can speak. I have I've been paying attention to Venus rising as the morning star and going outside when I can in the mornings and watching for Venus. And to me, it's special because when I stand outside and I pay attention to just how the star is shining through the trees, it feels like there's like a spiritual transmission of that moment. So then when I go throughout my day too, if I'm wanting to bring more calm, more serenity into a moment, I can think back and remember how it was to stand and observe the star.
That's wonderful. And can you say a bit about how your relationship to the world or to your environment changes when you enter into that mood?
Yeah, there's more presence, there's more stillness. It's this moment, right, before the day begins when everything's quiet. And so I feel like my relationship to the world is just more still, like not as many thoughts circulate, more awareness of the forces of nature in that moment.
And to take that the next step, did you try going back the next day to the same scene to see how it had changed?
Yeah, going out. There were several days I went out looking and like couldn't, like the star hadn't risen yet. And then once the star rose, noticing how, how it feels like with and without the star there. And sometimes it's too cloudy and I can't see the star. So yeah, different moments where it presents differently.
So that holds the key a bit to that first exercise, that you're having this one experience and the mood that goes with it, and you're aware of it as you described so wonderfully. And then going again to the same scene and noticing the difference. It's simply the juxtaposition of those two separate experiences. And just to clarify something that was said yesterday, maybe in mistake by me, and that is when you have these juxtaposition, the first experience on the first day and the second experience on the second day, you're simply observing the juxtaposition. You're not being invited to speculate how the first one got into the second one. That's for another exercise. It's simply observing A and then B and noticing the relationship of A and B. In that sense, it's a little bit of an exercise that's taking something out of what happened yesterday, of the past, and juxtaposing it with something of today, a moment of the present. So this is specifically an exercise that's drawing attention to something of the past in relationship to the situation in the present. That was the first one. Let's go to the second one. I think many of you actually tried this one because it has some fun in it. This is the second exercise from paragraphs 25 to 28. In the text, it talks about the neighbor, watching what the neighbor does and trying to establish what that does. Somebody who did that exercise, the exercise in whatever example you had, can you share that either with your little hand there or just unmute yourself and speak? What did you do if you did that second exercise, and what did you experience of it? I know quite a few number of you did it because it appeared in the chat. So it'd be good to hear an example if you have one.
I
So what-
can share.
Go ahead.
From my kitchen and dining room window, I have a view of my neighbor's horse pasture. And can't see any houses from my home, only pastures and and his barn. So every day I watch him come and work with the horses, either feed them or groom them or clean their feet or whatever. And I used to also have horses, and we have the same farrier. And so I was watching him, and he came out, and I said, "Oh, the farrier will be there in the morning because he's out cleaning their feet." And the next morning, someone actually came with a horse trailer and loaded the horses up. And I think he was rehoming them. And so something I had seen so many times before, with this very expected result of like, oh, the farrier is coming tomorrow or the vet is coming. Actually, the horses left. And so it was a very great practice in this exercise.
That's great, especially when they surprise you. It's good defining you. Yes, Sarah.
This one was a little confusing to me because it felt different from the others. This one felt like it was asking you to make predictions and think things through, whereas the others are just noticing. And so that felt really different to me.
That's a key difference. As I think, Annie, you had a similar question about, are you allowed to predict what's going to happen and what happens if you get it wrong? Exactly that. Here now you have an event of the moment in the present, and you then imagine what's going to happen tomorrow. A quick example to make that clear, and thank you for clarifying it, both of you. The example I had in mind is I was driving along the local here road, and I noticed that the one of my neighbors was sinking these huge pylons or holes for pylons into the ground, huge holes in the front of the deck of the house. And I thought, I bet he's going to expand his deck. Then I went away on a trip. I was away some weeks, came back, and I discovered he had planted huge bushes. I was totally wrong. So I predicted, based on what I saw in the present, but I predicted something which was, in my case, incorrect. But because I went back to the scene, I could then correct myself. And that's, again, an example of trying to become a little bit more attuned to your environment. But notice the difference, as you rightly pointed out here, and that is now you have something in the present, and you now move not into the past or from the past, you move into the future. That is, you're guessing, you're predicting. And then you check. And notice what Rudolf Steiner says about this exercise. It's kind of a subtle point, but it's interesting, I think. And that is, he says, when you do this kind of predicting, and you're correct or not, it doesn't matter. When you do this kind of predicting, then you may begin, he says, to tune into what he calls the necessity of things. That is, the way things need to work out. This is assuming some metaphysics here, but nonetheless, it's not just guesswork. You're trying to tune in a certain sense. Can I say it this way? You're trying to tune in to the intention, in this case, of your neighbor. It could also be much simpler. You're driving behind a car, you come to a cross section, and there are choices. The person can go left or right. Or maybe it's a T section, and you have only left and right. So you pick left. And the driver goes left. Got it right, yay! Alternatively, they go the other way. Whoops, got it wrong. Don't punish yourself. You don't get an F. You're simply tuning into the kind of necessity of what is happening. And that's an important little insight we'll come back to later on, in the sense that when you're doing this, you're not just guessing. You're trying to tune in to, what he calls the necessity of things, the necessity as they work themselves out. So we'll talk a bit more about that. Yes, Casey.
I'm realizing that I do this practice, or I attempt to do this practice with my student, an idea about how something is going to play out. Oh, is it not? I'm sorry.
Okay, good. It's breaking up. It's true. So yeah, do share in the chat. Thank you. Beth, for you?
Let me know if I break up too.
Great.
So I found judgment was coming through pretty strongly for me too. Like there's the observation of judgment was happening. So as I was looking at my neighbor who was cleaning up his yard, and there was snow forecasted for the next day, and I thought to myself, why in the world is he doing this? This doesn't make any sense. And I had so much judgment layered in. It wasn't just easy to just simply observe and then predict or think about why he was doing it. Instead, I made it my business to like judge him for it in the process. It's ugly, but it
Good.
happened.
Excellent observation. How true it is. Rudasthana says elsewhere, he says, 90% of what we think, we judge while we're thinking it. And he says, guess what? That's wasted energy. Nobody cares what you judge. Let it go and save the energy for observation rather than assessment of what you're observing. So thank you for that. This is a very helpful thing to do, just as the general hygiene. All right. So that's the second one. Now, to move ahead, let's go to the third exercise. Some of you might have tried this because this is particularly relevant, I think, for teachers. The example in the text from paragraphs then 29 and 30, the example in the text is when you're in the class and the child's misbehaving, and then you track back to what led to that, or what kind of breakfast did they have, or what was happening in the home, or did something happen on the bus on the way to school if they took a bus to school, and so on. And in this way, you then begin to unpack a little bit the behavior in terms of its antecedent, that is to say, what happened before. So here, this is a different example. This is not now something from the past into the present. It's not something that you have in the present and move into the future. This third one now is something you're presented with, in this case, behavior of a child, and now you're tracking it back into the past. So this is different. This is now moving from the present into what was before, into the past. But the idea, says Rudasthana, is similar. Namely, that is, as he puts it, you're trying to kind of crawl inside the story or inside the person or inside the situation. You're trying to see, as it were, the situation from the inside out, or if you like, from the student's point of view, rather than from your perspective, looking at it from the outside in a certain sense. So in all cases, you're trying to move from your perspective, which might be somewhat exterior and distant, to a more, can I say, interior or interiorized perspective from within the phenomenon, from within the cloud, you might say, from within the person, from within the child. Now, I don't know, did anybody try that exercise? Because I think it's a great one for teachers, but it didn't appear in the chat. And I'm not sure if anybody actually attempted that one with an example. If you did, are you willing to share it?
I can share.
Thank you.
If
Yes.
you guys
Please.
can hear me. I have a class that's combined 5th and 6th graders in one group, and I teach art and music. And I'd been having a lot of behavior issues with that combined class of 5th and 6th graders. And I really kind of had to step away because I was becoming so frustrated. I was carrying anxiety into the classroom with me, which was palatable, tangible to the students. And I started to realize, like, why am I having behavior issues? Previously, when I've had these classes individually, there's been a general positive classroom climate and respect and gratitude and appreciation. But that was lost. And I started looking around the room, and obviously, since the class is combined, there's not enough seating. So I've got folding chairs and tables that I have to get out in the 2 minutes between one class dismissing and the next class starting. And then it's also the rotation, like the kids, this art class for them rotates with PE. And there's a lot of boys and girls that really look forward to PE. And sometimes it's A, B day rotation, which gets confusing depending on, if we had school that week or holidays. And it was just like I was bringing anxiety into the situation, and then the kids are bringing anxiety because they're not sure what the rotation is. They're not sure, in their other classrooms, they have their own desk, their own defined space, not a folding chair, not a folding table. There's a comfort there. And then, you know, the kids that want to be more active, that want to do PE, they're instantly kind of anxious and disappointed walking to the classroom because they're like, oh man, we have to sit here. So I really tried to see it from their viewpoint as to, okay, they're acting out and ripping up pencils or cutting up erasers or throwing markers because of this. And so I just said, I understand that some of you would rather be in PE, and that's okay. You can like PE more than you can like art. That's all right. But how about we, you know, do this? Or, you know, maybe you like the PE teacher better than you like the art teacher. That's okay too, you know. And like, I still respect you, even though you'd rather not be here, but let's make the best out of the situation together. And that seemed to really help. And it made me realize too what I was doing wrong. Like Lenore said earlier, was I following my rules? You know, if I'm expecting the kids to follow them, am I doing it? Am I bringing a bad attitude to the situation? So it
Exactly.
really helped me. And so I'm going to try to do more things to create a better climate in that class, you know, and
That-
make the best out of it. At least it's warm now, so we can go outside and have class, because it's a constricting environment.
Yeah, that's an excellent insight, Kimberly. Thank you for sharing that, because it broadens the exercise beyond simply tracking back to the situation or the inside of the child in this case, or the person you're dealing with, to embrace also then your own inner relationship to that behavior. So that's not that you're owning it, but you're recognizing your role in it. And that is so helpful, because that is, as they say, charity beginning at home. So that's great. Thank you for that. So you get the idea, I hope, with that particular exercise. Again, moving then from the present back into the past. Now, there are last three exercises. I can go through them a bit more swiftly, partly because they're familiar. The exercise number 4, is it number D, which is on paragraphs 35 to 38. That, as I mentioned before, is essentially a reformulation of the first basic exercise. That is to say, you're simply taking something and you are visualizing it, staying with it the way Deborah described at the beginning. And the one little wrinkle that might be added here to this first exercise is that when you start it, you might indeed have it in front of you, so you can exercise all of your senses, not just the visual, but all of your senses with that object. But then once you've got a certain distance, becomes somewhat familiar with you, as Deborah put it, you've identified all the chinks and the kinks, the particular scars of this particular object, the pencil, whatever it may be. Once you've established a certain exactitude with the peculiar idiosyncrasies of this object, then you can close your eyes and inwardly reconstruct that object. If you miss something, check it out. Take a look, take a smell, take a feel. But once you have clarity about the specifics about the object, then you can reconstruct it in the following days for 5 minutes inwardly. And that adds another element of inner activity, because not only are you simply receiving it as a percept, to use yesterday's language, you're now actually supplying the percept from within, conceptually. That's the exercise number D, or the fourth one. Then comes the next one, which I think in some ways is the most fun one. This is now E, exercise from paragraphs 39 to 44. And that has to do then with picturing somebody and then imagine what they wore. When you can't figure it out, you add a piece, you make it up, make it as crazy as you wish. It's not just a color, it's a polka dot, whatever you want to do for the clothing, or whatever example that you chose. It doesn't have to be an individual. But the point is, here you're trying to improve on the surface, you're trying to improve your memory. But there is a bit more to this story. And before we get to that, is there somebody who did this exercise? Now, this is number E, who did exercise E and could share a bit how you did it and what you learned from it. We had lots of examples there, so I'm sure many of you have in your repertoire an example of trying out this exercise with what's sometimes called a clothing exercise. Example?
I did this one. I can speak to it a little bit. I'm famously bad at remembering what people are wearing, and even what they look like and what their names are. And so this one I particularly want to practice more. And I started with, I had taken my kids to get pizza, and it's just a little small place. So it's not like you sit down or anything, but just a little counter. And so I was trying to remember the next day what that person had looked like. And what I struggled with is I could imagine a lot of things that seemed right. Like, oh, maybe he was wearing a white shirt. That seems like it could be right. And I could form an image that seemed like it might be correct, but I really didn't know if a single one of the details were accurate. And so I was deciding, like, should I, if I'm not 100% sure, should I just give him a pink tutu and polka dots and, you know, spiked green hair, or should I try to keep it in what feels like it actually might have been right? Because I'm left with an impression of this person, but no details, if that makes sense.
Okay, very good example. And the answer is go for it. Go crazy. Don't worry about it. Should be, again, the judgments, all the judgments coming back in again. Spare yourself the energy. Just go for something crazy that you know is wrong. That's at least a mission of honesty there. And then let it be as crazy as you wish. And that frees you a little bit from this kind of almost, what should I want it? Almost the kind of overpowering guard that says, do this, do it this way. No, the heck with the guards. Do it your way. Make it up on your own. And notice again, this is now a different kind of exercise, because here we are looking at something and remembering something that happened in the past, and now we're projecting that into the future by changing it totally in order perhaps to check it out, or if not, let it go. Because the object is not so much to check whether you are right or wrong, although that's nice. More is the point that the next time you see somebody, or maybe you see the same person, you'll be more observant. By filling in the gaps or the things you couldn't remember, that will make you a better observer the next time round. As Steiner puts it, he says, a good memory is the child of accurate observation. If you remember something or train yourself to remember something, you'll see more the next time you actually observe. So this, again, a different example from the past, projecting into the future, whether you check yourself or not. And that leaves then finally one last one. And that has to do then with this exercise number F between paragraphs 45 to 49. And here you're invited to do a very simple thing. Again, first of all, suspend judgments. Yay, more energy spared. Because let's say you have something to decide. Shall I go here or go there? Do I buy this or do I buy that? Do I say this or do I say that? You weigh the two possibilities. There might be more than two, but at least you weigh the two possibilities. And then you suspend judgment. You say, I'm not going to decide that today. As we say, I'm going to sleep on it. And that's the exercise, to summon up something, but then having summoned it up, suspend it. Or put it differently, this is something that you have to decide in the future. You bring it into the present, weighing it up, but you don't resolve it. And that might feel uncomfortable because some people like to come to decisions and results, faculty meetings, let's get this decided. Well, sometimes you need to do that, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes weighing, letting go, letting it up at night, bringing it back the next day, maybe a second time, even a third time, and then finally coming to a decision. It's this activity of suspending judgment that is this final exercise. And again, Rudolf Steiner says, if you do that, having pros and cons of something or two options and letting them go, he says, what you're doing also is you're doing something much more profound, he says. What you're doing there is you're actually tuning in to what he calls the hidden necessity of things, the way the things need to be. And you, in weighing them, are not yet deciding which way to go. You're listening, you're tuning, you're trying to get inside again, inside the inner necessity of things. Now, Deborah, before we go to the break in a moment, can you throw up that slide of these exercises? And I want to show something at the bottom of that slide, if you have it available, because I want to summarize a bit these exercises, 6 of them, with a final thought here, because there is a kind of hidden relationship, I think, that exists if you can put them all on a single slide. Here we go. if there they are, A through F, and I try to suggest what's past, what's present, what's future. But notice now the relationship. If you take the first exercise, A, something from the past into the present, the clouds, and notice that is the complementary exercise to exercise C, where you take something from the present and you track it back into the past. This is the naughty child. Exercise D kind of is a present to present. You're simply holding something in the moment. It's a kind of a pivot between past and future. And then the last pair, again, I think has a special relationship. That's number B, having to do with the neighbor. That's something of the present, as I mentioned, into the future. And that is the complement, in a way, to what I just mentioned about something out of the future, a decision you have to make, brought into the present, but not yet resolved or decided. The pro and con. And that leaves one last one, exercise number E, having to do with making up the clothing if you can't remember it. Again, it's something now from the very past, it was yesterday, to the not yet realized future. In that sense, it spans the entire period of time from past to future beyond the present. So I offer you that as a kind of quick guide to these exercises and why they are designed as they were to help you get out of yourself, again, by suspending judgment, getting out of yourself, but into the other or into the situation or seeing something from the inside out as opposed to the outside on. Okay, let's take a quick little break here. And if you don't mind, can we come back to keep the math simple? Come back at 20 minutes past the hour, and then we'll pick up a few last thoughts as we go to the final session. So a quick break, and we'll see you in just a few minutes. Okay. So welcome back, everybody. In just a few minutes, I'd like to open up the session here for what I call open mic. This is something I try to offer as we come to the end of a weekend or a series of weekends, because there might be comments or questions you've had that didn't get resolved, or they didn't get answered in the chat, or you have thought of them as we were in conversation in the last session. So I call it open mic, and it really is open to anything having to do with passive training and thinking, or to do with the other passages you read for the philosophy of freehood, or indeed what you're experiencing through Leonore Aneurysmi. And before we get to that, I just want to offer one further thought that sums up a little bit this practical training and thinking. It's a fairly controversial statement, and it appears, I think, on page 145 of your actual text. 144 and 145. He says it at different ways several times. I'll just take one example here. He describes it in this way. Page 145, this is in the second paragraph. He says, when a person thinks about things, the way we talked about today, the past, the present, the past, the future, when a person thinks about things, the person is only rethinking what is already in them, this inner necessity. And that's, in a way, a very controversial thought, that somehow by this kind of practical, moving, creative, living thinking, you're actually tuning into a reality that goes beyond your immediate circumstances. It either reaches into the future, or it reaches back again into the past, or it even links, in this arc, as somebody said, the past into the unrealized as yet future. And that's, I think, a very radical thought, because normally we don't think that way. We assume that what is, and what was, and maybe we can spool back, and maybe we can spool forward, but we can't really anticipate because it hasn't happened yet. But in this funny way, Rothenstein is suggesting, well, if we lift our thinking from this, what I'll call physical thinking, into this more sort of living thinking, we're actually able to step a little bit outside the constraints of time and see a little bit of the past and the future, as well as the past and future's relationship to the present. That's a fairly controversial thought. But I offer it here as one way of trying to pull together a theme here in this session, because in as much as we're really trying to lift off or make flexible our thinking so it becomes a bit more like living thinking, in these kinds of thinkings, not thoughts now, but in this kind of activity of thinking, we are engaging ourselves to do it, assuming we're clear about our motives. If we're doing it for psychological reasons, judgments was mentioned earlier on, pressures, that's different. But if we're doing it purely out of ourselves, these kinds of thinkings are free. That is to say, free of constraint. And if they are free of constraint, then these kinds of ideas, these kind of thinkings we have, can also give rise to what we do. And then our deeds also become free. And that responds then to the fundamental question of this whole book of Philosophy of Freehood. Can we also be free, not only in what we think, but in what we do? And to the degree we lift our thinking from a more physical, shall we say, to a more living level, we can say, yes, not only is our thinking free, but our deeds that flow from these kinds of insights, these kinds of thinkings, they can also be free. Protestante, to finish this, says the simplest example of that is an activity of meditation, in the sense that nobody pays you to do it. There's no constraint, there's no pressure, there's no outside voice saying, do the meditation because you'll be paid more. No, none of that happens. If you engage in any kind of meditative exercise, it is only because you yourself have resolved to do it. And you put before yourself, as the object of meditation, something of your own inner thinking creation. And therefore you know it because you are it. And that's an example then of what he calls sensory thinking, or the ability to be a free human being. Okay, so I promised you some open mic. So this is now where I get to sort of lean back a little bit here and just see what is still on your hearts, or what you'd like to share a little bit. And then we'll finish with a few thoughts about these 6 exercises that you're doing these 6 months. So open season, you might want to put your hand up. It's easier to spot you if you put your hand up, or just unmute if you don't do that.
This is Sharon. I put a note in the chat. I noticed on page 144, there's a mention of whoever harbors this idea will be constantly diverted by a false feeling from seeking right habits of thought and from making necessary demands on thinking. He uses the word right as in there's right and there's wrong, or and then again on page 152, I know they're totally separate ideas, but if this habit persists, people will never experience a time when the right idea occurs to them at the right moment. I just wanted you to clarify that.
Yes, I think the quick word there is to say a more accurate translation out of the German would be correct rather than right. This is not about right and wrong. This is simply about being accurate or kind of tuning into something accurately. It doesn't carry judgment with it. It simply carries a kind of precision, shall we say, in your thinking. Is that fair? I missed you. You're breaking up a bit, but I did hear part of what you said. Well, I've lost you. I'm sorry. Sharon, can I hear you? Are you there still? Nope, we can't hear you. I'm sorry. But yeah, thank you for that. If I was able to speak to you, I hope that matched. Annie, your hand is there.
Yes, I have a couple questions. One is very broad and general about the book. I wondered if you think it's worthwhile, talk about the relationship between the 6 exercises as we sort of map them out, numbering the paragraphs in the text that we read, and then the 6 exercises that are laid out in the appendix, which are actually different. So and those exercises seem just a little bit more by the last 4 about sort of like positivity, sort of a attitudinal shift as opposed to like a specific 5-minute exercise or really working with memory. So I was curious about the relationship between those. And then since we're going to work with an object for a month, I started with a toothpick for 3 days. And then I switched to what I thought was a nondescript rock in my driveway, like that came probably from a landscaping company, very, very nondescript, I thought, but I'm really enjoying all the different things that come out of it and how much I can see on this rock. And I wondered if, because I feel like the examples I've heard are more like paperclip, toothpick. Is it actually for some reason better to make myself keep doing the toothpick the whole time?
Great question. And I have some bad news for you. Rudolf says, of course you can pick a natural object, but as you hinted at already, if you really think about it, nature is really interesting and is full of mystery and surprises, and it never lets you down. So it's almost, can I say, carries you along, as Deborah mentioned the other day. It's too easy. Whereas if you choose something that is mechanical or something that is man-made, or in that sense does not have natural life in it, even a mineral, even a rock has some life in it. Think stalactites and crystals. If you pick something that really has no life in it, it's easier because it's more boring. And as Deborah mentioned, once something is boring, it doesn't draw you. You have to do all the work yourself. And in that sense, yes, if you're tired of a toothpick, which is kind of simple, you can try a key. Sorry, for many years I used the key for my car without thinking about my car. By the way, just the key. And there's a lot going on in the key, which is still pretty mechanical and dead. So there's enough variety to keep you going if you do it for a whole month. But nonetheless, it won't induce you into the kind of reveries that anything from nature is bound to include. To your first question about the 2 sets of exercises, the exercises from practical training and thinking, as you rightly say, they are specific for this cognitive ability and the ability to loosen it up and to get inside the necessity of things, as Steiner puts it. Whereas the philosophy of freedom is much, much broader, much broader. I won't say we've scratched the surface, I don't like that, but we've begun to peel the onion. But there are many layers to the philosophy of onionhood here, and we have barely started to peel that. Specifically because about halfway through the book, it's as though Rudolf Steiner put down his pen and picked up something else. And the second half of the book is seemingly utterly different from the first half. And that has to do then a lot with much more to do with human freedom than we were able to anticipate in this brief session. So yes, the philosophy of freedom is a much, much broader conversation than simply about the nature of thinking. And in that context, then, these 6 exercises, which, by the way, don't appear in that book, they appear in another one called How to Know Higher Worlds. These 6 exercises are also intended to be much more comprehensive than simply addressing thinking. Yes, it's true. The first exercise has most to do with thinking. That's right. But the second exercise, as I hope you'll discover with Deborah when you get there, has much more to do with the will. Now, of course, there's always some thinking in the willing. There's also some feeling in both cognition and volition. But nonetheless, the emphasis of the second exercise has a lot more to do with will. And the third one, indeed, I would say, is trying to move more focusedly, if that's the right word, into the feeling life. So you start with the thinking exercise, the polar opposite, you might say, unconscious will exercise, and then in between the kind of dreaming, half waking, half sleeping capacities of feeling. That's the third exercise. And then you go to the fourth, fifth, and sixth, just to briefly anticipate there. Whereas the fourth exercise, that in a way is combining a little bit of thinking and feeling. And then the fifth exercise is working a little bit more with the feeling and the will life. And as you might expect, the sixth exercise brings then all 3 of willing and feeling and thinking into a single exercise for a month. So yes, those exercises are much, much bigger. Does that speak to what you were saying there, Annette?
Yes, that was all really helpful. And I love the middle ground of the key. Thank you.
Okay. So again, open season continues here for a few more minutes. If you have a hand, you can put the hand up. If not, simply unmute yourself and speak.
I guess I have a comment / a question, and I think Douglas, you're just amazing at like launching into maybe getting what I'm asking. I think in that last exercise piece on page 156, that concept of, I guess the whole concept of sleeping on a decision, like the classic proverb, that really struck me. I think this has all been, I guess you could say, like really heady, and I've been trying to track this, and I've been doing the readings, and that just like really was a powerful moment for me about how when we're dreaming and we're in that subconscious dream space, the I is not consciously occupied, like with the idea or the decision of just that dream space. And I know there's like Carl Jung, and there's just all of the school thoughts of the power of dreams in that dream space in our subconscious. And I guess I just had maybe the comment, and maybe you wanted to speak to that, of how beautiful that is, and maybe in that free space. Or I guess that's the question. Are we truly free in that subconscious space when we bring a question or a problem or a thought into like the truly flexible space of our dream time? I don't know, maybe speak to that.
Yeah, it's a wonderful question and comment as well. The answer is yes. Understanding what Wittgenstein meant by the full implications of being free. Because he says, ultimately, if you are a free human being, that means you also accept all of the responsibilities or consequences that flow from your decisions or thoughts. And you can't say it's your fault anymore. Not to say it's yours, but if you entered into a phase where you are acting out of freedom, which includes then the consequences of your deeds. As Gandhi described when he was jailed, he said to that British magistrate, he says, your job is to put me in jail. That's what you need to do because of what I did. So this brings up then a much bigger question about freedom, which Wittgenstein describes, yes, in more detail in part 2 of this book and also elsewhere, where he describes then the relationship between ourselves and our freedom and our acting freely, and what he calls the laws of necessity, that which must be. That, by the way, is what I was hinting at earlier on through these exercises, getting inside necessity, getting inside the other side, getting inside the other motive of the other person, for example. In that sense, this is now letting go, shall we say, of your own freedom. Not really, you still have it, but embracing within your freedom the consequence, that is to say, the necessities that flow from it. Now, this is taking us far afield, and I'm so glad for the question. I'm so tempted to extend this session, but I'm not allowed to do that. But nonetheless, it's a wonderful question. And the more we think about freedom in its full meaning, not simply what I want and what I do, but in the full meaning of being then the respondent to my own actions, then we understand what he means by freedom. And if you allow me a quick story here, I had a friend of mine who went skiing. He loved skiing, and he would jump onto or get onto the ski lift and zoom up. One day, he was halfway up the ski lift and his ski fell off. Now, this is very embarrassing. Ski has to stop, you get off the lift, you go into the snowbank, you get your ski, you climb back up onto the ski lift, and then you continue up to the top of the mountain. Had a good ski down and decided to have another go. Came then to the lodge where the ski lift was starting, and there was a huge line of people waiting to get onto the ski lift. Why? Because it had to stop when his ski fell off. And now he was facing in his future, that is in front of him, the consequences, the necessities of what happened earlier. And once we begin to recognize freedom, not only in terms of what we bring and do, but what meets us out of the future as a consequence of what we do, then we begin to understand what Rudolf meant by freedom. And this takes us from, you might say, an earth perspective into a much more cosmic perspective, where we think not only of free will, but necessary will. And we are both.
Thank you.
Well, this might be a good moment, unless there are further questions, just to say a few words about these 6 exercises. And I'm going to start with a very simple question for you, and you can throw this into the chat. If you think about the conditions of our times and consider what are possibly the most prevalent and most pressing, the most urgent, the most common, I'll call them psychological ailments, what would you offer in the chat as the most common psychological ailments of our times? And that could apply to young people, could apply to older people, yourself, those you know, people in the world. Depression, I hear, anxiety come right away, fear, distractions, loneliness. So yeah, anxiety clearly is number 1. Overstimulation as well, judgments, we talked about that, eccentricities, distress, again, anxiety coming very quickly, shame and polarization, this goes on and on. Very helpful. Thank you so much. I'm going to focus, though, on the first one that came up here and the one that keeps coming up, and that's anxiety. Anxiety. What is anxiety? You know what anxiety is. I bet you all have it at one point or other. But leave it at this for the moment. Most anxieties have something to do with what hasn't happened yet. And usually anxiety has the quality of what I will call carbon monoxide. You know it's there, but you don't know where it is. You're not even sure why you're anxious. You just feel anxious. There's the kind of, and this kind of anxiety kind of takes a little bit out of yourself. You may have that experience. And then the question is, what can you do about that? Well, what's really helpful is if you have some way of bringing yourself into concentration and focus without regard to anything but the moment. That is exercise number 1, the basic exercise number 1, the concentration of thinking. It has what Leonor also mentioned, I think a week ago, the feeling of duh, because the concentration is also a grounding. In other words, for our common ailments, this first exercise can be immensely helpful. Whether we do it for ourselves or, frankly, we can also do it for the world. These exercises of concentration are therapeutic for the world, not just for ourselves. Almost second there is depression that keeps coming up there. That's very interesting if you think about depression. Again, at the risk of becoming too simplistic about it, you can feel, I think, in the gesture of anxiety, a certain kind of frisson, as the French say, kind of flying out of yourself, being almost elevated, you might say, flying away, being out of it, as we say. In the case of depression, the gesture is possibly the complementary opposite, having to do with weight and solidity, even sometimes, bogged downness, swamp. And what happens if you're in the swamp, or in some sense buried underground, or overburdened by something, trapped even? Think of people who are trapped in an earthquake when the building falls on them. The problem there is you can't move. You're stuck. And therefore you need an exercise that a little bit allows you to move, a little bit like Leonard's R's. To begin with, not much at all, just a little tiny movement. And that little initiative, that little energy of movement, that's exercise number 2. And Deborah will talk more about that when you get to the second exercise, the so-called will exercise. For some people, out of the 6 exercises, this is the most difficult one to do. You can think, you can feel, you can try and balance, but to do something, man, that's difficult. There was an occasion when a very well-known teacher, trainer, was describing these various exercises, what you do in the morning, what you do in the evening, what you do in breakfast, and what you do on Sundays, and what you do every day, and some days once a month. And the students said to him, look, this is too much, too many exercises. We don't know what's the most important exercise? And this teacher trainer sat back with a smile and he said, it's the one that you do. That's the will exercise, the one that you do. So for depression, I won't say it's a cure, but we're talking about exercises that ameliorate or try to restore some inner hygiene or health. And the will exercise, as you'll talk with Deborah about, I think is very helpful. Then there is a third one which came. This often is the language of teenagers. I see it a couple of times here. It's more common with teenagers, I think. Every teenager I know is stressed. They're all stressed. But the trouble is they haven't quite understood what stress is, because stress is actually a good thing. It's what every bridge has when it's anchored on 2 sides over a river or a railway line and is under a certain tension. And the tension is either to collapse or to explode. And the stresses in the bridge are intended to contain the pressure that would collapse and the pressure that would explode. That's what tension is. And they call that stress. So to the degree that you're under stress in this, meaning like a bridge, that's actually healthy. It's called blood pressure. It's called various other things, muscular pressure and psychological acuity. It's actually healthy. It's tension. So what is stress is actually not the stress, it's the imbalance of the stress. It's too much to do, too many assignments, or not enough to do, and then you're stressed because you don't know what to do with yourself. Usually it's too much of something, too one-sided, in other words. The stress is really an expression of one-sided tension. And therefore, what is the obvious remediation for one-sided stress or tension? It is exercise number 3, equanimity. Balancing of this and with that. I won't go into details now because you'll read about that later, but you get the idea. It has to do then with this balancing of rightful and even healthy stresses and tensions. Then I also saw in this, I saw this one appear quite often, and it's very popular right now. This morning I was reading in a medical journal about a situation which is now taking on international proportions because there's been a new study to come out recently into the condition of loneliness. The British government has appointed, and this is not meant to be a joke, the British government has recently appointed a minister of loneliness. And now I discovered this morning, Japan has done the same. They also have a minister of loneliness. They're responding to the CDC in this country, but also to the WHO, which has established that depending on how you count, somewhere between 1 in 2 and 1 in 3 adults are in a chronic state of loneliness. And this even has physiological expressions now that can be monitored and measured. We are, in other words, we're in an age of what you might call silo consciousness, where we feel ever more separate from each other. We talked about that already last week. And what happens if you're in a state of utter, or let's say, strong loneliness? Well, usually it's accompanied by a feeling of being sort of separated and cut off and maybe ignored and possibly even disliked. All these things go with this sense of separation. Very different from solitude, not to be confused with being alone. This is loneliness. And therefore, what is it that will help you to move or to step beyond this condition of loneliness? Well, one example is if in something or someone you can identify something of value. It might be somebody who is a nasty individual, but they're good at one thing. Or it could be a circumstance that you hate to go through. Every day you have to go this, but it has one redeeming feature. To the degree that you can focus on that one redeeming feature or that one valuable element to a person otherwise you wouldn't tolerate, you're able then to release a little bit yourself from yourself in order to enter just slightly into someone else or something else. And once you do that, once you enter into something of value in something or someone else, then you can actually begin to love it because you found it. Rudolf Steiner characterizes this as an exercise. He calls it the exercise of positivity. But I think that's a little bit misleading because it's not being positive about things. In fact, he clarifies that. But nevertheless, people sometimes think of positivity as being positive or even Pollyannish positive. And that's not what he means.
The direct object.
The calendar.
I thank you. So it's accusative.
I heard something, I couldn't hear what it was. Sorry. No, all right, it's gone. Anyway, although Steiner describes this as the exercise of positivity, that's not, I think, what he means. He means rather this ability to find something that is valuable in what is otherwise possibly either negligible or even distasteful or utterly disgusting. It doesn't matter. Something of value. And that is exercised then in terms of the series of the 6 basic exercises. That then is the 4th one, the exercise of so-called positivity. And that again is working with thinking and feeling in a much more integrated way than the first or the 3rd exercise of the basic set. And to finish out then the last 2, these I didn't see in the list. I didn't read fast enough perhaps, but maybe I can see it after this is over. But there are, I think, 2 other ailments of our times beyond what you've mentioned here. And there are many, many more, of course. But just to mention these last 2, and that is, I think, especially the case right now. And that is, if you are in these different conditions of soul ailment, it can happen that there's something that you grab onto for dear life, hoping to have something to hang on to in this age of chaos or disruptions or this or that, or hopes or expectations, too much or too little. In all of that unsettlement, whether it's too much or too little, you grab onto something that you hope is safe and secure. I call that fanaticism. Hanging on to one thing at the cost of all else. And it can be a lifesaver, but it is one-sided by virtue of being fanatic. And here then comes exercise number 5, the exercise of what is usually described accurately, the exercise of open-mindedness or suspension of judgment. Or as the Romantic poets call it, the suspension of willing disbelief, or the willing suspension of disbelief. Just in that sense, the pro and con, I will simply hold it in abeyance, in that sense, open to the possibilities. Rudolf Steiner gives all kinds of examples. He says, you know the church spire, you know it's been there for centuries, just imagine it falls down one day. Could happen if somebody told you, rather than say, oh, you're ridiculous. You say, well, could be. In that sense, the exercise of open-mindedness, in which you're now engaging not only your feeling life of equanimity, but also certain will ability, that is the willingness to let something be that you otherwise would regard as impossible or unlikely. Fanaticism. And then finally, one last exercise, the sixth one there, which I think also has a relationship to a modern condition. I came across an image the other day, which I can't now share, but it showed, in this case, one industry broken up into all these little bits and pieces. That is to say, it had to do with the medical profession, and here were the doctors, and there were the nurses, and then the clinic was over here, and then the assistants over there. They're all working independently. They're not working together. And the patient, as a result of that, feels, in this visual aid, feels a sense of fragmentation. And that idea of fragmentation has, of course, much wider implications. We can identify all kinds of ways, partly out of our silo consciousness, but many other ways we can sense this situation of fragmentation. And there, just in one sentence, to say that is what the sixth exercise is intended to work with. That is to say, balancing all the 5 previous exercises or the basic exercises into some kind of relational or harmonious whole. And again, I'll leave it to Deborah to talk about that later on. That's a quick, I hope not too breathless, jog trot through these 6 exercises and their wider implications, and I trust you'll enjoy as you go through them. To come to a close here, and then we'll have a last burst of eurythmy, and then whatever questions may come after the hour is up. Just to say one final thought here, and that is I've been trying to work with this notion of so-called living thinking. And to the degree that we succeed in it, and I've offered various examples, you've practiced various examples of the beginnings of living thinking, but the degree to which we come to live in this way, there are, I think, some consequences. And the first consequence is that if you engage in this kind of exercise, these kind of living thinking exercises, you may find that you kind of restore a living relationship to the world around you. The comment about freedom also bears on this issue. Taking full responsibility for your circumstances, that's another way of relating to your circumstances. And related to that, then, to the degree we practice this way of thinking, we're trying to, and I hope to some degree achieving, a certain sense of the whole, whether it's the whole community, the whole family, the whole neighborhood, the whole nation, the whole continent, the ecological health of the whole world. These are also, I think, healing acts that we can undertake through these very modest, very simple examples. Because, last thought then, to the degree we practice these kinds of exercises, I think we're achieving a measure. It's only modest, of course, but we are achieving, I think, a measure of union with our fellow human beings and with the world in which we live. And that, in a way, is why we're here. We've come to Earth in order to work with our circumstances, with our world, and especially then with our fellow human beings. So with that, I wish you well, and I will now turn this back to Leonor for the last 5 minutes of eurythmy, and then we'll close with the Calendar of the Soul, which was requested both in English and German, which I'll do at the very end. So Leonor, the next 5 minutes are yours. But you're muted.
There we go. Here, I've been listening to these all different exercises and wondering, okay, which one are we going to end with in eurythmy? Oh, so now, if you want to do the hallelujah, put up your hand and let's see if we've got a lot of people. You see the other screen? Oh, more on the second. The second screen is leading, and the third screen, pretty good. Now, that was about half of everybody. So how about the cloud? Hands, 1. Oh, we're not doing so well with the cloud. Okay. Cloud? Oh my goodness, hallelujah is leading. Yes, we've got 2 for the cloud. Thank you, thank you. I'm glad you like that poem. Okay. Alone I will prove, under the stars in the skies alone I will prove the power of my spirit. Anyone for that? I think we're all set We've got a smattering. That's good. Okay, we're going to start with Alone I Will Prove, and then we'll do the hallelujah. Okay, and the cloud, it could be acting like a rain dance. So we'll leave it for now because it's been raining for 2 weeks here. Okay, so it's all vowels. Alone I will prove. So it starts with under the sky and the stars. Under the stars and the sky. Alone I will prove the power of my spirit. Great, and let's do of my spirit and make it really a strong E, and it's both hands, it's a stretching from left hand to the right. The left hand has to be active or it turns into a different gesture, which we don't want. So alone, and here we're moving towards the I will prove the power, and here we go. Both hands are active of my spirit. Yes, much stronger, really good. Thank you. Now let's do hallelujah, and we've got 2 minutes, so. Do you want me to talk it through once, or are you really getting it now? Talk through? Yes? Yes? Okay. So we'll do one time, I'll talk it through. I'll try to say it loud enough, even though I'm back there. You don't see a lot with the feet. This is called in standing, but there's actually a form for this in movement. So it starts here, and the ha comes right from your breath. And then the ah comes out of the ha, and it descends. It doesn't open. It's the same gesture. Yeah, this is what I mean. It's ha, and it doesn't open to come down. It's one gesture, and the arms stay the same distance apart. Ah, that's it. And then here we go. The first is I cleanse my feet. I cleanse my knees, my lower body. I cleanse my heart. I cleanse my speaking. I cleanse my thinking. I cleanse my whole physical being. I come to a gate. The gate opens, I'm in a new space. This, my spirit self, my consciousness soul, my life spirit, my spirit human being. All that I've been through, I offer up. I have my God-given ego. I thank the world of beings for that. And I breathe back into myself. Now, the first day we did this last week, I said, isn't this strange? We breathe out at the beginning and we breathe in at the end. So where have we gone? At night, you fall asleep. You breathe out. All kinds of things happen in the night. We know that from physiology now. We know that we dream. We know we come to judgments. All kinds of things happen in the night. And in the morning, we breathe in. So this is like, you could call it the night dream. And there was an article in the Times about how your Your neurology is totally alive, connecting and connecting and zip, 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 zip through this. And your memories, and often when we breathe back in, we are calm. All that happened has been processed. So this beginning and ending and this word in between has that space, not this space. Okay, last time. And take it all and put it together for yourself. Thank you very much. I hope you take that with you.
And thank you, Leonor and Deborah, for this rich weekend. We will close with the Canon of the Soul, and then for those who wish to stay on, Leo and I will do so also. The growing human eye, itself forgetting, yet mindful of its origin. The growing human eye speaks unto the universal all. In you, myself, releasing from fetters of my own creation. In you, I ground my own true being. Es spricht zum Weltenaal, sich selbst vergessend und seines Urstands eingedenk, des Menschen wachsend Ich. In dir, befreiend mich aus meiner Eigenheiten Fessel, ergründe ich mein echtes Wesen. The growing human eye, itself forgetting, yet mindful of its origin. The growing human eye speaks unto the universal all. In you, myself, releasing from fetters of my own creation. In you, I ground my own true being. And with that, we wish you well. We'll be back, I guess, in about a month's time, Deborah. If you want to unmute one last time and say goodbye, do so. And if you stay on, Leo and I will be here for a few minutes yet. So all the best and thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.
So if some remain, this is for you simply to